Hey everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up Tuva on your claims data. So the starting point is really starting with claims, your claims data in some data warehouse, and already having DBT installed. But from there, I'm going to show you how you can set up a new DBT project, how you can map your claims data to the Tuva input layer in that DBT project, how you can then run the Tuva package to process all your data into the Tuva data model. And then finally, how you can explore some of that data to do analytics and explore some of the docs as well. So just to get started here, I've created a database called Acme Health. I'm pretending like I'm a health plan that has claims data, and I've loaded all my claims data into a schema called raw_data, and I've got three data tables in there: an eligibility table, medical claim table, and a pharmacy claim table. And that data, it's just synthetic data that we've created to develop and demo the Tuva project. And you can see it, basically looks like claims data. So this is kind of prerequisite starting point is to have your data, your claims data loaded in a database in your data warehouse so that DBT can run against it. So you need to have this done already. The other thing you need to do if you don't already have it done is you need to set up DBT. You need to install DBT. DBT has really good documentation on this. You can go look up on their website, but you can use any sort of package manager like pip or homebrew to install DBT. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over number one, let's get into the actual setup of DBT. So we're gonna set up a new DBT project, and if you haven't done that before, once you have DBT installed, it's pretty simple. You can do DBT init, the name of your project. So I'm going to do DBT init Acme Health. And I'm actually on a pretty old version of DBT, 1.3. So I'm not sure if they still do this. I think the latest version is actually 1.7 or something like that. But what they're trying to prompt me to do here is to connect to Snowflake. I've already done this separately, and once you do it, you don't need to do it again. So I'm just going to Control C and cancel out of this. But you can see that I now have a DBT project called Acme Health, which I've now navigated to that directory, and we can look at all. It's basically a standard DBT project. And if we want, we can look at kind of the folders in there, and you can see this is the folder structure of a standard DBT project. Okay, so now that we've created the project, we got to do some configuration to kind of set things up. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the DBT project YAML. This has a number of variables that are going to be important to configure. The first thing we need to configure is this profile variable. This is what tells DBT how to connect to my particular Snowflake instance. I'm not going to go into how to configure your profile. Basically, your profile is a separate YAML file that is stored somewhere else on your computer. You can read, DBT has good documentation about how to do that. I've already done this step, and I've created a profile called Tuva_Snowflake_dev that has all the credentials to connect to our Snowflake instance. So I'm going to set that. Let me actually close some of these. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do, here is there are a number of variables that we need to set that are going to be important for the Tuva project. So I'm going to create some vars, and I've already kind of I've already written these out and saved them to another file. So I'm just going to copy and paste them. But basically, there are three variables that we need to add that the Tuva project is going to use. And so these variables are claims enabled. We need to set that to true because we're going to tell Tuva to process claims data. And this is gonna control exactly which downstream models get run. The other thing we need to set is the payment CMS HCC payment year. This is important for running the CMS HCC data mart. And then the final thing we need to set is the quality measures period end. And this is important for the quality measures data mart. And these are basically, so in our synthetic data goes through calendar year 2018. And so that's why we're setting the payment year to 2019. So it's kind of perspective. It's like the next year when we're going to expect data, or when we're going to be operating. And then the end of the period for quality measures is 2018. We've got a couple of other things we need to set. The other thing we need to set is kind of, we need to tell DBT specifically which database and schema we want Acme Health SQL models to be written to, and Tuva Project SQL models to. So in my case, it comes with this is the YAML we've been working in. It comes with this stuff pre-configured. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this and replace it with the information I copied from the other file. So this is going to say any models from this Acme Health DBT project, I want those written to a database called Acme Health and a schema called input layer. And we can see that the database Acme Health already exists. We already saw that. The input layer schema does not yet exist, but DBT will create that when it goes to build models. The only schema that exists right now is raw data and then the information schema. And then for anything in the Tuva project, we are just going to point to the Acme Health database in terms of where we want those tables to be written to. I'm not telling it where to write any of the schemas because that's all pre-configured in the Tuva project. Okay. Another thing we need to do is we need to add a macro. So you can see in my DBT project, Acme Health, there's a section, or there's a folder for macros, and there's just nothing in there right now. We need to add a macro called generate schema name. And the reason we need to do this is if we don't add this macro, this is kind of like a standard DBT thing that's a little bit annoying. If you don't add this macro, it's going to prefix all the schema names with whatever your default schema is from your profile.yaml. So my default schema is public, and it's going to essentially prefix every single one of the schema names that get built with public. This macro changes that, so basically says, hey, don't add that prefix. And you can find this sort of if you're DBT's docs, you can copy this macro from DBT docs, or you can go and get it from a number of repos on the Tuva project have this macro as well. And I think the last thing I'm going to do to configure DBT is I'm going to import the Tuva project. So I need to add a new file called packages.yaml. And I need to actually import two packages. I'm just going to copy these from the Tuva demo repo, since that's handy. You can find the Tuva demo repo on our docs, on our GitHub site. And I'm just going to copy those in. And this is going to say, hey, go grab the most recent version of the Tuva project that's greater than 7 and less than 8, 0.8, and also go grab DBT utils. Now, to actually import them, I need to run DBT deps. So let's save all these, and let's close all these. And now I'm in my Acme Health DBT project, and so I'm just going to run DBT deps to import both of those packages. And so that was successful. And what happened is now we have this new folder called DBT_packages and DBT utils and the Tuva project up here. And this is all of them, everything in the Tuva project is here. Okay. So the next thing we need, so that's all the setup we need to do for DBT. The next thing we have to do is we have to map our claims data to the Tuva input layer. And we're going to do that in our DBT project as well. So what we really need to do is for mapping, claims data comes in all sorts of different formats, right? And to run the Tuva project, those different formats have to be mapped to the input layer. The input layer is really like the API for the Tuva project. Once data is mapped to it, you can run all the other data models and data marts on top of that. So the best, we have a couple tools on, if you go to the tuvaproject.com, first you can go to data dictionaries and see the full data dictionary for the input layer. You know exactly what columns you need to map to, data types, etc. We also have a claims mapping guide that kind of provides, for a lot of the fields in the input layer, it provides kind of some suggestions or heuristics about how to do the mapping. And you can also Slack, if you have questions about what to do, you can also Slack us and ask those questions, and builders ask. The nice thing about the data set that I'm using is I'm kind of cheating, and it's already mapped to the Tuva input layer. But I'm still going to show you the configuration that you would have to do. So first, DBT, at least in version 1.3, ships with this examples folder, and I'm going to delete that because these are just like some pre-configured examples. So let's get rid of that. So delete that. So now models is empty, okay? I need to add a couple of things. So I need to add a new folder. I need to configure the sources, all my sources. So I have a bunch of source data, right? And that source data is in Acme Health raw data. And I need to tell DBT where this data is. How I'm gonna do that is by adding this sources.yaml file. And I am going to put some details in it. So I've kind of done this. So I'm going to just copy this stuff over. And this is what I'll need to put. So what am I configuring here? So it's a sources.yaml file. I'm naming it Acme Claims. You could name this whatever you want. I'm telling it where the database and schema are, where the data is located. And then I'm naming the tables that I'm going to use as sources. And now I need to add a model for each of those sources to map them to the input layer. So I'm going to add a new file called eligibility.sql. And I'm going to write a simple SQL statement, select star from source, and this is where I'm going to reference the name of the source, Acme Claims, and the name of the data table, so eligibility. And now DBT is going to say, okay, I'm going to read from this source, and this is what it's going to use to populate the input layer. And it's going to know to populate the input layer with this because of how I configured. And I said, any Acme Health models, I want you to load them into the input layer. And then once you do this, the rest of for all three of the tables that are needed for claims, because we already said we're only running claims here, claims enabled true, then these tables are going to be created. And then when the Tuva project runs, it's going to look for those tables in the input layer, and then it's going to be able to run. So I need to do this same thing for the other two tables. So let me copy those, and I'm going to change this one to medical claim. And then I also need a pharmacy claim. And then I'm going to change, this is the medical claim one. I'm going to change this to medical claim. And this is the pharmacy claim one. I'm going to change this to pharmacy claim. Okay. Now, if your data did not exactly match the input layer, which it probably doesn't, this is where, instead of doing select star, this is where you would be writing your custom logic to rename fields, to set data types correctly, to do some transformation to get your data in the shape it needs to be in to match the input layer. So this is where you're going to be doing all of that. I don't have to do any of that because for the purposes of this demo, my data already matches up. But this is where you would do that. Okay. So now we're done with step 3. That's how you map claims to the input layer, by setting up those sources. Now we're ready to build. So looks like everything is saved. I'm going to go back to the command line, and to build the entire project now, I only have to use one command, dbt build. I've already imported everything. I'm all ready to go. So this should work. Let's see what happens. Initially, what it's going to do is prompt me to authenticate. Oh, it's saying I have a problem. Oh, because I can't type. Depends on a source named Medica claim. Let's see if this fixes it. How many errors am I going to get? That's the question. Okay. So this, I'll just do this quickly. I have multi-threading turned on, so we have DBT set up to authenticate into Snowflake via Google Auth, so that's what's happening here. So this is a little annoying. You kind of only have to do this every couple of hours. I haven't done it in the last couple of hours. But now that that's done, it should be kicking off. Let's see if it gets started. We won't watch the whole thing, but let's just see if it gets started. Awesome. So you can see what's happening here is there are 361 data tables. Some of them are views, but effectively data tables that are being built in Snowflake now. And if we go look, some of the schemas, or most of the schemas, are probably showing up now. Yeah, here we are. So we went from just having raw data and information schema. Oops. Raw data and information. So now we have the CCSR for condition procedure groupers, chronic conditions for chronic condition groupers, all the claims pre-processing stuff, HCCs, all the different data marts, the core data model. These are all here. These aren't populated yet because it's running, but after DBT finishes running, these will all be populated. All right, looks like DBT finished running and everything built. So we've got 361 new data tables in Snowflake. Let's explore those a little bit. So if you want to go to the tuvaproject.com and click on use cases, we've got a couple queries here that you can use to just explore the data, right? So let's say I wanted to quickly get a sense of the prevalence of chronic diseases in my population. Copy and paste this query, execute it, and I see that there's 1,000 patients in this synthetic data set. There's a lot of chronic disease in this patient population. 530 patients have hypertension, 444 have hyperlipidemia, et cetera, et cetera. So you can play around with that and see how you can do different analyses, like use ED classification to look at potentially preventable ED visits, HCC suspecting to find patients that are suspected of qualifying for an HCC but not having documentation to support it in the payment year, or do things like look at quality measures. So all that's possible. The other thing, if you're not familiar with DBT Docs, DBT has great docs that come with it. And so with two commands, first DBT Docs generate, and secondly with DBT Docs serve, I can generate and then create really good documentation on all of the data models and data transformation that is going on behind the scenes. And so this just takes 1 second to finish up. And now that it's generated, I can do DBT Docs serve. And now this is just going to throw it up locally. You can also host this. These are just static kind of like markdown pages. You can host it on like GitHub Pages or something like that. That's what we do. But this is the entire, all of the mappings for the sources and the entire Tuva project. So you can explore like any data mart and go see like the data model, exactly what's happening here. All of the Tuva project data models are also on our docs here under data dictionaries, so you can go look at them here as well. But if you customize anything, those customizations would show up here, not on our docs site. The other nice thing is the other really nice thing with DBT Docs is the DAG. See, a DAG is just a graph that shows you how all the tables in the project feed into one another. And this is really great for kind of like troubleshooting or really understanding the code. So if you're not familiar with this and you're a data engineer, I really encourage you to check it out. All right, but that really wraps up the demo. So you can see how you can go from raw claims data in a data warehouse and set up DBT to go from that raw claims data to analytics ready data. Hopefully this was helpful. See ya.